What's up, everyone? Welcome into DodgerHeads, presented by DodgerBlue.com, your home for the 2020 World Series champion Los Angeles Dodgers. My name is Jeff Spiegel, joined as always by Rob Morse for a weekend preview, and we're back again. Dodgers-Giants for the second time in as many weekends. Of course, the Dodgers swept the series in San Francisco a week ago. The Giants have remained hot. They've still won 7 in a row against teams other than the Dodgers, and while the Dodgers had their 8-game winning streak ended last night against Houston, they've still won 12 of their last 14. So, Rob, a week ago, this was probably the most anticipated series of the season for the Dodgers. Is it still just as exciting to you a week ago, even coming off of a Dodgers sweep of the Giants?
Of course, Dodgers fans get their first look at these revived Giants. The teams come in with the same record, tied for second in the West behind the Padres. Giants are still having a great season, beating up on the lesser teams in the National League. They just came off a 2-game sweep in Arizona, got the offense back on track, 13 runs in 2 games. They did lose Brandon Belt to an oblique strain, so they'll be without him this weekend. But yeah, hopefully the Giants put up more of a fight for the neutral baseball fans out there. I'm sure the Dodgers would love to see another sweep, but yeah, I'm anticipating it just as much as I was last
Love it.
week.
Love it. Well, as you said, the Dodgers, there is some offense in this series. The Dodgers have the second best offense when it comes to runs per game in the league. The Giants, 11th. On the pitching side, Dodgers have the second best ERA in baseball, 2.97. The Giants are 5th with 3.26. One thing I'm curious to get your thoughts on in a moment when we get to the probables is that we're seeing a lot of these pitchers for the second time in a week. So I think 4 of the pitchers we'll see in this series are repeats. And so let's get into tonight's game. As far as the line goes, it's a little more challenging. There is no line because the Dodgers haven't officially announced the starter, given that everybody's expecting them to have a bullpen game. David Price is my guess for who will start the game, but probably only get him for a couple innings. But it'll be interesting. I mean, the Dodger bullpen games in the past have been Price and then Nelson. Jimmy Nelson's on the IL, so we'll see there. OddsShark does have some numbers up. The Dodgers minus 140 on the money line. The total is 8. So without having a specific pitcher that we can talk about, there's no props to talk about. As you look at Dodgers minus 140 and the total of 8, anything in this game that catches your attention?
Yeah, I wouldn't blame anyone for wanting to back the Dodgers at minus 140. They've been really good at home, especially that last homestand. I think they went 8-1 or 9-1. Um, but yeah, with the bullpen game, it's a little tougher to put your money on the Dodgers. I do like the over here. Though 3 straight Alex Wood starts have gone under, the Dodgers did just see him, and they should be able to get a couple runs off of him. And then I like the Giants' offense to contribute to this over 8 as well. Only 4 of the last 13 matchups since the start of 2020 between these teams have stayed under 8. So there's a lot of runs being scored in this series. So I'm a little worried about a rested Dodgers bullpen at home, but I still like the over 8
Yeah, I
here.
think the over is where I would lean to. I like the Alex Wood matchup for the Dodgers. I know they've struggled against lefties, which would probably give you pause. They're one of the worst, bottom 10 teams offensively against lefties. But this is a guy that they just saw a week ago. They put 10 base runners on against him. I know only 2 runs. He did have some strikeouts, but he did allow 10 base runners. I feel like that feels like the most the Dodgers offense has had against anybody in forever. I mean, Desclafini, who we'll talk about in a moment, is the exception to that rule. But I think I'm with you. I like the over. With no Jimmy Nelson in the Dodger bullpen, that means they've either got to turn to a much lesser guy, an Uceda or a Santana or somebody like that for a couple innings, which is a big difference between if you could get 5 from Price and Nelson. So I think I like the over there. The money line minus 140, I mean, is about as low as you're going to see it for a Dodgers game, which is interesting. But yeah, I think no Jimmy Nelson gives me a little bit of pause on the total. Moving ahead to the rest of the weekend, we do have some probable pitchers the rest of the way. Bueller versus Desclafini on Friday. Urias versus Webb, who we'll see for the first time on Saturday. And then Sunday's the marquee matchup. Kershaw versus Gausman. Neither of these guys faced either team so far this season. So as you look to this, we thought we were going to get a lot of the same matchups. The Dodgers kind of shuffled things up and pushed everybody back one start to get the bullpen game in there. And so as you look at these Friday, Saturday, Sunday, is there a particular matchup that you're kind of keying in on that you like a little more than the rest?
Yeah, I'm looking at Saturday with Logan Webb against Julio Urias. This is a big overplay for me. I'm hoping to catch it at eight and a half or lower. Logan Webb missed his last start with a shoulder injury. Those are always scary for pitchers, and he wasn't very good before that. So the Dodgers may end up hitting that over on their own. But the Giants can hit lefties too, as long as they're not named Clayton Kershaw. And they get their second look in a week's time with Arias, though he did shut them down in San Francisco. I think the Giants will get a couple runs off Arias, and I think the Dodgers will put some runs on the board against Logan Webb, who's probably the weakest link in that Giants rotation, maybe other than Scott Kazmir, who just
Yeah,
joined.
as a Dodger fan, I'll be honest. I'm kind of glad it's not Scott Kazmir. I mean, as much as you'd think that you want Scott Kazmir making his first major league appearance in 5 years, the Dodgers couldn't necessarily figure him out. I'm curious for you, and this is something we've talked about on this show before. Seeing a guy like Wood, Buehler, Desclafini, Urias, all of those four pitchers were just seen by their opponent a week ago. Does that make you lean a little bit more towards the over? I mean, do you think that gives a big advantage to the hitter getting three more at bats against a guy they just saw a week ago?
Yeah, so that's a complicated question. So the general concept in baseball is that if you've seen a guy recently, you'll get a better look at him again. But keep in mind the books know that, and they're going to bake that into
Yeah.
the line. So they might post these lines maybe half a run or a full run higher. So even though you think that might be an edge for you, that number is already reflecting that concept. And then of course with a guy like Alex Wood in particular, he was a
Yeah.
Dodger so recently. The Dodgers coaches know his tendencies, and so that does help the hitters a little bit. But yeah, these Vegas odds makers, they're baking that into the line already. So I don't think you can factor that in as
Yeah.
an edge too
Yeah,
heavily.
Friday's another interesting matchup because when we talk about seeing a guy a second time, I mean, the Dodgers absolutely annihilated Disclafini, 2 2/3, 9 hits, 10 earned runs his last time out. This was a guy that him and Alex Wood both, we kind of talked about, hey, the numbers are really good, but like, yeah, this probably isn't sustainable when you look at who he's pitching against and that kind of thing. And of course, it all blows up in his face. His ERA is up around 3.6 now after one start. So, I mean, I don't see any reason to believe that the Dodgers couldn't have. I mean, I'm not expecting 10 earned runs in less than 3 innings again, but that doesn't strike me as a guy who's going to come back a week later and just be utterly dominant when it comes to the Dodgers. And on Friday, I would say the over is interesting too because Bueller was good, but he wasn't missing bats. He only had 5 strikeouts in that game. He kind of just got by on weak contact, which is a lot less sustainable than if you can just consistently be missing bats. And so that's an interesting one for me as well. And then Sunday's the marquee one: Kershaw versus Gossman. It's too bad Brandon Belt's not playing. I looked up some career numbers versus Clayton Kershaw. Brandon Belt in his career, 4 for 62. 4 for 62. He has an 0.65 batting average, a 134 on base, and an 0.81 slugging percentage. Posey and Crawford, not a whole lot better. Brandon Crawford, 6 for 48. He's got a 125 batting average, 143 on base, and 125 slug. Posey, the player who Kershaw has faced more than anybody else in his career, 113 at bats, 221 batting average, 267 on base, 327 slug. So he's holding Posey under 600 OPS, and Belt and Crawford are below 300 in the OPS category. So I'm wondering if the oblique strain was maybe just an excuse to skip Kershaw's turn in the rotation there. But on the side of Gossman, obviously this is a guy who statistically has been one of the best pitchers in baseball. A lot of people really like him. Has not faced the top 10 offense in baseball. He's faced the Padres a few times, but they're, when it comes to weighted runs created, they're about middle of the pack. He's faced a bunch of teams towards the bottom: the Marlins, the Pirates. The Reds are the best offense that he has faced. So, what's your take on Gossman? How sustainable is what he's doing? Are you a believer, or does he fall into the Disclafini Wood camp where, hey, maybe opponent stuff is inflating these numbers a little bit?
I mean, you know me very well, Jeff. I've been on Gossman since he started putting up good starts last season. And this year he's only gotten better. And I know the opponents haven't been the strongest, but it's still
Yeah.
major league hitters that he's been shutting down to the tune of 4 earned runs over his last 45 innings. That is insane. He hasn't allowed more than a run in
Wow.
6 weeks. Um, and this is ace versus ace. I really like the under here. I'm hoping to catch it at 7.5 or higher. Um, but And the Dodgers didn't see Gausman
Yeah.
last weekend. They dodged him once. They finally get him here, and I think he's going to turn in another great start at Dodger
Yeah.
Stadium.
And another storyline to keep an eye on here as we sort of move past the probables and close this thing out is there's a very real possibility that Cody Bellinger makes his return this weekend. Zach McKinstry could be making his return this weekend as well. And so a couple of guys that would be a massive boost to the Dodger offense. And so sort of the headline that I'm hearing is, aside from Sunday, it sounds like we kind of are leaning over on all three of those once we get firm numbers, because we don't even have a firm number for Thursday night's game. But we like to see some offense Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and then Kershaw and Gossman's probably the exception going under there. And I want to say, for the record, we did really well last week, okay? So we've had some rough weeks here, but aside from Rob giving you the Giants series victory overall, I think on Friday night's game, we were like 7 for 7. We gave you under 5.5. We gave you Dodgers 5.5 run line. We gave you under for the game. We gave you Wood over strikeouts. We gave you Turner under 2 total bases. So we gave you some good numbers there last week. We'll see if we can repeat this week. Again, it's harder because there's no official starter for tonight, but that's all right. We should be a fun series. And again, Dodgers 16-6 at home. They get all 4 of these at home, and so Daniel and I said at the beginning of the week, if the Dodgers could win 4 out of 6 this week, that would be a really successful week. They took 1 out of 2 in Houston, so now they're going to go win 3 out of 4 against the Giants as they return home. So that's Rob Morse. I'm Jeff Spiegel. We appreciate you, as always, for joining us. Check in with us every week before the weekend series. Daniel and I will be back Saturday night, early start. It's like a 4:15 start, so we'll be back doing a post-game show live on Saturday night. So make sure you hear Dodger Blue 1958 on YouTube. Again, that's Rob Morse. I'm Jeff Spiegel. Have a good one.
The best team holding a trophy high in the air. The Los Angeles Dodgers, champions of the baseball world.